Okay, are there Democrats in the House? Is there labor in the House? Are there Tim Walz fans in the House? Okay, I am pretty excited to be here. I started my day in New York with Hakeem and Chuck. I did their delegation, which was, always fun. And then I went over to Ohio, and they're pretty psyched because Sherrod Brown is going to win his re-election today. And now I'm here, and I told every one of them, which I'll tell you, I reminded them at Minnesota, I brought them greetings from our state, that we're a state where the women are strong, where the men are good looking, and where all the vice presidents are above average. I reminded them that being the state of Humphrey and Mondale and now Walz, we're the state where moms bounce their babies on their knees and say, one day you can grow up to be vice president. We are pretty psyched about what's going on here. I know there's leaders, our greatest party chair in the country, Ken Martin is with us. Incredible job. Marge I see back there. I know Bobby Joe somewhere here, and I saw Dan. There you are, Dan, always happy, standing there in the back, bringing up St. Cloud. There you go. Woo-woo. Yeah, there. Okay, good. And I think Nick Frentz is here. Yep, right there. Thank you. And I missed a few, I'm sure. We're very excited that Peggy Flanagan is the co-chair of the National Convention here. We're really excited about Tina's leadership and everything that's happening in our state. And I have been having so much fun having people see Minnesota in this positive way with Tim's leadership. First of all, I think about the last 28 days. Have you gone back? 28 days was Sunday, okay? That was the day when President Biden made that courageous and generous of heart, generous of patriotism decision to hand over the torch to Kamala Harris. That was 28 days ago that happened. And everyone said, oh my God, your party's gonna be a mess. We had just had Trump and Vance in Minnesota, right? On what I call the first stop on their farewell tour. And there they were. There they were with all the talk of Project 2025, which I always want to remind people that is not the number of felony indictments that Trump has. That is that's a bit over 100. So they were there. But what is going on our side, right? They're like, oh my God. Well, what happens? Kamala Harris unites our party in literally 2 days, all right? She unites our party. What happens next? People say, oh, women candidate, they can't beat Donald Trump. And I say to them, you know what? Nancy Pelosi did it every single day. So, don't tell me that. Then what happens next? What happens next is she raises over $300 million in just 3 weeks. Grassroots, Zoom calls, all the like. And then what happens next? She has to pick a vice president. Okay, kind of a speed dating situation. And, our state, Tim starts getting on the list, and then he keeps going up in the list. And then we kind of get our Vikings mentality, the mentality that got my dad to write that book, Will the Vikings Ever Win the Super Bowl? And it's sadly still relevant today. All right, so we're kind of like, well, I don't know. All these other states are like, ooh, and we're like, well, I don't know. He's really, really good. We really like him. And then there is that glorious day where it is announced that Tim Walz is going to be the next vice president of the United States. And I think what the country has seen is what we knew about, the video of Hope where he's showing how to use a handless cell phone. That's priceless if anyone hasn't seen that. How to fix a car by video. The fact that he signed up to serve like so many rural kids do at age 17 when he was in Nebraska, and that he did that, and that he then stuck with it for 24 years. And in Minnesota, like in every other state, as I could see people nodding this morning in New York and in Ohio, get the special nature of the National Guard. Yes, they get sent out to other arenas, just like Tim was sent to Europe, but they also protect the homeland. They are there up in I Falls bagging those sandbags, right, when we need help. They are there when they need help in Rushford when there are those big floods. They are there when there are tornadoes hitting Wadena and other cities. That's what the National Guard does all over the country. So I'm kind of like, you want to go after him for serving in the National Guard for 24 years? oh, go have some fun with that because it's not going to work, all right? So you've got that. You have the fact that he took this winless high school football team. Okay, I got to be honest, you guys. Nick Frentz knew that story, but I didn't know that story. I'm like, really? He took a winless high school football team and turned it into a state champion. And you're going to meet this week some of those kids that played on that team, some of his prior students, and what he did for them. Then you've got the fact that he made that heroic decision to run in a district that has only been held by Democrats twice in 100 years. And he won it over and over and over again in the top 10 members of Congress for getting bipartisan things done. Tim did all that, I know, because we were all by his side, right? Remember that. We remember the parades in Rochester, and we remember the rallies at Minnesota State and Mankato. We remember all that. That's our Tim. And so then he makes that decision to run for governor. By the way, somewhere in the middle of all that, my mother-in-law, which you've probably heard, loved the Walls. My mother-in-law and father-in-law still live in Mankato. They raised their 6 boys in a trailer court. Little side story, Mankato people know this, but the rest of you don't. My mother-in-law had 4 boys. She really wanted a girl, got pregnant again, and had identical twin boys. And they had these 6 kids in a trailer. They had single bunk beds. And everyone from church would bring over casseroles for my mother-in-law and father-in-law and the kids when these boys were born, all in pretty fast succession, especially when the twins were born. So she decided later she was going to pay back. And she brought hundreds of hot dishes and casseroles when new babies were born to like practically everyone in Mankato. And she shows up at the Walls house with her chicken parmesan dinner when Gus is born during that race for Congress and decorated their house in balloons, all right? That's Minnesota. That is giving back for your neighbors. That is helping people out. So we know the Walls family well. And one of the things that I love that America is seeing now with the interaction of Kamala and Tim on that stage, as you all know, I know Kamala well. We ran against each other for president. A lot of times people hate each other after that. We got to be better friends, okay? So I know her quite well. And I know how strong she is. And when I see them out on that stage together, I can't help but think how she must have seen this in him when she was interviewing these outstanding candidates, that he is really good with working with strong women. Gwen, Peggy, and me and Tina, okay? So he is like, this is all going to go really well. He gets sharing power. He gets that when you have power, you use it to do something. And you all know what he did with the help of these great leaders in this room when he passed the biggest middle-class tax cut in the history of Minnesota. You all know what he did when he decided, during COVID, we had lunches for our kids. Well, we're not going to let that go. When I'm hearing from all these people, especially in rural Minnesota, that they want these lunches in the schools, I heard the same thing. He got it passed into law. He got passed into law the best paid family leave policy in the United States of America. He did all that. So I am incredibly excited for what we're going to see this week. We're going to see a lot of Minnesotans on the stage. You all guys know who've been delegates before. I love a good convention. I love the hats. I love the buttons. I love how the states stand and read their votes and everything about it. It's democracy in action. And that's where I want to end, kind of where I began. Tonight you're going to hear from Joe Biden. This is a guy that stood up for our democracy, right? He saved our democracy. He took on Donald Trump and beat him. And you will never forget that day of that insurrection. Started out as pomp and circumstances. And that night, it was just me and Mike Pence and Roy Blunt that made that walk over the broken glass, that made that walk by the spray-painted pillars, and it wasn't any celebration of democracy. At that moment, we were doing our job. And some page had the foresight of saving those boxes that contained all the electoral ballots for the country, including Minnesota. They would have been burned, they would have been stolen, but they put them in a safe place. And we made that walk with the ballots. We got to the House. We said democracy would prevail, and it did. And 2 weeks later, when people were saying, hey, put that inauguration underground, I said, no way. Joe Biden said, no way. Kamala Harris said, no way. We're going to take back that stage where they invade it. And at that inauguration was Amanda Gorman, the youngest poet in the history, yes, of America, in her bright yellow coat. Amanda Gorman, who reminded us to find light in the never-ending shade. That's what happened these last 28 days, Minnesota Democrats. We have found that light in the never-ending shade. So let's take it through this week. I will remind you, having gone to a lot of conventions, some things can go wrong. There can be delays. You don't get the CU one, but just keep thinking about that light in the never-ending shade, okay? Remember why we're here. Ken is laughing because he gets a lot of the grief. By the way, when I arrived in Chicago for a joke, I called Durbin and Tammy Duckworth, my friends, and they answered both of them. I called them like, I need 75 floor passes for an entire town in Minnesota. They're like, oh my, really? I'm like, I'm kidding. There is a lot of stuff out there because people are so excited. So I'm asking you as leaders, you got here, you ran for delegate when things maybe didn't seem as exciting and light and fun, and you did your duty. And you could say to everyone, hey, I'm a delegate, so there you are. But you know there's just things that happen in these conventions. So just always think to yourself, everyone's trying their best here, okay? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is to remember when you go home what our job is, right? Remember how Al always used to remind us you can do anything in like 2 months? That's what we're going to be doing. You can do anything. You can make those calls. It's going to be so important to get lawn signs out for everyone, right? It really is, because there's so much misinformation online. And so I want people to actually see that they're supporting the candidates and get it out there. We got the state fair in front of us. Woohoo! And so I just want you to get out there, volunteer, help. It's a lot of fun right now. And people are listening. People who weren't going to vote are voting, okay? People who are, we always have a big independent group, right, in Minnesota. We've got a big group of moderate Republicans that have been voting with us in a number of these races. I know a little bit about that. And so you talk to people that maybe don't agree with you on everything, right? That's democracy. Because this decision is going to be like no other. It's exciting, it's positive, and look at it. Yeah, we're not going back, but the most important of that chant is we're moving forward. So let's go out and win this and have a great week, delegates. Thank you so much.